Okay, Rob, you asked us how we met. Well, how I met Randy Otto. Well, it's a very simple story. I was invited to go to St. Louis to speak at a symposium about my book, God and Churchill. And it was a mutual friend of mine and Randy's called Jim Williams who invited us to go and do this.
Lovely man.
And on the afternoon that I arrived, I was told that there was going to be a Churchill impersonator, this chap Randy Otto, who was going to come and entertain us on the Friday evening. I have to say that my head immediately went into my hands. I thought, oh no, please, not another Churchill impersonator. I'd seen many of them, obviously on screen and things like that. And I have to say there's only one impersonator that I've ever put any store by. And that, I think, was Albert
Finney.
Yeah, and I think we both agreed that
Precisely.
Albert Finney. Yeah.
He's the best.
Albert Finney really is the best Winston Churchill.
Iconic.
However, having said that, when I went along for the evening event, I made sure I at least had one glass of wine prior to Randy coming out on stage. And I also made sure I had a glass of wine sitting next to me. Sadly, it wasn't the rejected wine that you see here, but it was still a glass of wine. And I noticed within moments of Randy walking out on stage that he didn't try and impersonate my great-grandfather from the point of view of his voice. Churchill had a lisp, and to try and impersonate that lisp is actually very difficult to do, to get it in the right place. And so Randy didn't try and impersonate the lisp. He most certainly used a British accent, but left the lisp out. He had all the intonations of Churchill, the hand movements, everything, even the stoop. Within a few minutes of him starting, I honestly believed that I was in the room with my great-grandfather, and it was the most incredible feeling. So taken in was I that at the end, when he asked us if we would like to ask any questions, I dared to ask him the one question I would like to have asked my great-grandfather, Winston Churchill. I would have asked him, and I did ask Randy that night, if he had had the opportunity of meeting Adolf Hitler in the 1930s, when a meeting had been set up, but Adolf Hitler sadly rejected him, and he didn't get the opportunity, would the outcome have been any different? Well, I realized as soon as I had asked the question, this really wasn't a fair question to ask Randy. He was, after all, just an impersonator of Winston Churchill and not my great-grandfather. However, he immediately came back with the best answer possible. Do you remember what that was?
Of course.
What was it?
Didn't work out well for Neville Chamberlain, did it?
I was absolutely gobsmacked. I realized that Randy not only knew his profession, he's been doing it for 43 years now, but I also realized that there was something very special. And at the end of his performance, I asked him, I said, this has never been done before, and I certainly don't want to muscle in on your performance, but I was wondering, would you like to do something together? Obviously, me being the great-grandson of Winston Churchill, him being a Churchill impersonator. But I felt that there were questions, a conversation that I would love to have had, like my father had the opportunity to have, with my great-grandfather. So we teamed up, and then last night in Lake Mills, we did our very first inaugural performance of what we've called The Dream, Conversations with My Great-Grandfather. And prior to this, we went along to Lewis Station Winery, here also in Lake Mills, and we were offered various wines to taste. And the last bottle of wine that we were asked if we would taste was this bottle here called Rejected. Well, I immediately looked at it and I thought, this is amazing, because my own story is that I'm dyslexic. And at school and throughout my youth, I was very much rejected myself. I was told I was thick, I was stupid, I'd never achieve anything, least of all become a public speaker or indeed write a book. And I know from studying my great-grandfather's life that Winston Churchill himself was also very rejected.
Rejected by my father, rejected in World War I, World War II, prior to World War II, of course. After World War II, rejected many
times. And Gallipoli.
Gallipoli, of course.
Indeed, he was rejected throughout his life. Which indeed is my mission in life, to make sure that before you give up on life, you've heard the life story of Winston Churchill. And when you've been as rejected as Winston Churchill, then you can give up on life. So we teamed up, and at Lewis Station Winery, we came across this wonderful wine, Rejected, which I have to say is the best red wine I have ever tasted in my entire life. And I really am genuinely not saying that. But Rob, who's the owner here, who creates this wonderful wine, he gave us 12 bottles of wine, and several of them were this Rejected wine, which we had tasted. We took it on stage last night.
We drank all of them last night.
Drank them all last night. It was absolutely amazing.
Splendid.
But particularly this Rejected wine. It was most appropriate because we have been rejected. So therefore, if you yourself have been rejected in life, this is the wine for you. Sadly, I think, for those who haven't been rejected, I'm sure you wouldn't enjoy the wine. But there is hope for you yet. If you go out today and you find someone who'll reject you, then you too can enjoy Rejected wine. However, if you can't find anyone out there, just go to askwinston.net.
Askwinston.net.
And you will find that Randy Otto, Winston Churchill himself, will happily send you an email of rejection. And you too can enjoy Rejected wine from Lewis Station Winery.
Chip off the old bot, don't you think?
Rejected.
Rejected.